great to work with, and they each have had a relationship with the donor who I never had the pleasure of meeting. And I'm going to ask that they start out by introducing themselves and how they knew the donor who died before the fund ever came here. And every time they meet, we learn something new about the donor. And I guess I should point right here, because this was in our annual report, and Nan Pyle is the story that we chose to tell this year about the power of endowment. And I should share with you, all of the stories about Nan usually make us smile and laugh a bit. They are very entertaining, and we do it in the spirit of joy, and we believe Nan would have enjoyed it as well. And so come along with us as we tell some good tales. So let's start with Tron.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, we should start this way.
Actually, we should start on age because you've been around man longer than I have.
Okay.
So why don't you start?
You and then
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Go ahead. This is how the meetings go. There's no agreeing about anything.
in approximately, I would get 1972 or 3, maybe 4, when I was in my 30s, and a senior at Pete Murray Mitchell Company. An ex-employee referred me to Mrs. Pyle, whose husband had died in Payson, and she had moved to Phoenix. And the young accountant, I went out and met with her, and as John Lisher has referred to this engagement in all of our, it's kind of like, it was always kind of like herding cats.
Literally.
Literally. Well, obviously, also a lot of cats involved. But somebody out of ASU wrote a book after Nan's death about her life and the unusual nature of her existence. And it's entitled Nan Pyle, Payson's Unhappy Millionaire. And she was a heiress from New York City, basically, and left an unhappy life there to come out to Arizona and married a Payson pioneer named Lou Pyle, who used to run the wagon train from Phoenix to Payson, as I recall. And the book kind of chronicles her early unhappiness and then her basic unhappiness with being unable to fit into the environment of Payson, basically because of her urban orientation. And anyway, the book chronicles her very unhappy life. It was from my own standpoint, kind of a diversion from the normal kind of clientele I had at Pete Mowers. And for that, you know, I was somewhat thankful for the whole situation. Shirley Murley, who was her bookkeeper for all these years and was mentioned in the book, is also a member of our advisory board. Anyway, it's a very interesting situation. I would hasten to add that with her private foundation being created and with its relationship with all these various organizations that she had her hand in, even after her death, the herding cats thing still went on. But the great thing about converting the private foundation to a donor advised fund is it basically took us, people who were her advisors, and allowed us to kind of step back from the whole thing, get a little anonymity and get some professional support from the Arizona Community Foundation. And I still remember, because at the time this happened, I was a tax partner, and I remember the utter joy at having completed this transfer, and would no longer have to worry about the chores that I had to accomplish within the constraints of a large accounting firm. has been, it was then and has been a very successful mutual relationship.
Ron's covered the whole story, Ken. You're supposed to have the beginning.
Oh, the beginning.
Did you print this out?
Walter says I'm next, although I think you knew it longer than I did. Weren't you an insurance agent before I got involved?
Possibly.
How long are you going to talk, should I say?
I'm not going to talk about it.
Let me start, you can fill in the blanks. I came on board somewhat like Ron. It was a diversion, although I was conscripted somewhat. Nan called Reed Carlock, who some of the people who may remember, it's been gone about 10 years now, senior partner of Carlock, because she had discharged Ed Lowry, ex-mayor of Paradise Valley, for some reason. I don't know why that was, but she wanted Reed to be her estate planning attorney, and Reed was a Renaissance person. He certainly had done the work. But he ascertained over this somewhat disjointed phone conversation that meant house calls. And so I was the sucker in the chair. Basically, I was assigned to Nan Pyle, and I would go out to her house. And Nan was a unique human being. There's no way that any of the three of us, all of us who knew her personally, could convey to you what it was like to sit in Nan Pyle's presence. She called me a smart aleck. She said I was too young, I shouldn't wear a tie. Aren't you prepared? And by the way, don't kick the cat. I don't know that she was always sober. And that's a true story. And she had some major health problems. Shirley Murley should be here on this panel. She's not with us today, but Shirley was her girl Friday for decades, basically. And so Shirley would buffer the dissatisfaction that Nan felt. I think Ron was her favorite. I think I was her least favorite, and I think Walter was in the middle somewhere. But we would get fired periodically, and Shirley would say, no, Nan, they're helping you out. But it was an experience. Ron's exactly right. She was a ship out, or she was a ship without a port out here, especially after Lou passed away. They asked us, and you should moderate, you should set us up.
I enjoy listening. I'll chime in.
Basically, they asked us about her philanthropic interest, and her philanthropic interest was who was the last sob story and how much of a check should Shirley write? And then Shirley would say, well, Ron will let me have the money. But why don't you chime in what you did in this troika?
I inherited her insurance. Actually, I think maybe in the early 80s or late 70s, or something like that. And she had a big row house in Osborne and like 46th Street on Cherry Lane. You can go there today and drive around and find it. And it had an Otis elevator in it. And it was built by a colonel in the 20s, I think, maybe the 30s. But, so we had to go out and do the inspection, and this house was a disaster. But it was very, I'm not sure she fixed it up nice, but after she died, I do remember it was quite an adventure trying to sell the house. And she had got it put on the National Register of Historical Places in hopes that it wouldn't get torn down. But she had lots of dogs and burros.
More about the burros later.
Yeah, burros later. So that's how I knew Nan. She was very interesting. She was, I got along with her fine. I wasn't looking for money for her. For the latest sob story, which is true. She could find the latest thing that some down and out person, and that's the way she was, helping out.
We formed a private foundation on October 14th, '83, organizational meeting in November of '83. Nan was the president, Shirley was the vice president, I was the secretary, and Ron was the treasurer. Walter skated on that somewhat. Nan died October 9th of '85. We ran the foundation about 18 months active before she died, and we ran it again about 3 years, 2.5 years after she died. And Ron can testify this probably better than I can. We were absolutely appalled as to how much it cost. Why don't you pick up on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure the Community Foundation has some statistics on how large of an organization you need to be to operate as a private foundation effectively. But my professional experience is that's a fairly significant number. might put it in the realm of $5 to $10 million, maybe more than that.
What do we have, 2 million and change?
Something
It's over there on the-
It says $1.6 million on that.
No, I thought it was.
It's on the close.
Investments weren't doing all the time, that was
No.
another reason.
Yeah, well, we started out with $2 million, but
And we were getting paid.
well, that's the thing, there was no paid person to kind of keeps track of what was going on. We weren't a part of the American Association of Small Foundations, or whatever that outfit is.
Well, you need to know that we had our investment advisor up in Palo Alto, and we were paying top dollar, and actually, unfortunately, it was a friend of mine, which didn't go too well.
You had to do the firing.
Yeah, I had to fire him, but to anticipate your question, how did we get from this dysfunctional private foundation to a relatively fun, advised fund, was Steve Bittenthal, who was the CEO at the time, and I had lunch at a club up on North Central, and I am moaning and groaning about what a miserable life I have with the Nan Powell Foundation. And I said, would you want this dog? And he said, well, they didn't have $471 million in. He said, you bet. And so we transferred in the end of '88 all the assets of the Powell Foundation, private foundation, over to ACF into the Holbrook Powell Advised Fund. And the rest, as they say, is history.